It is Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and you are logged on to Love Bay Radio, your number one online radio for Afrobeat music, Caribbean music, talk, chat, learning, fun, hanging out, liming, as we call it. And I am your host, Nadia Headley. Happy to be bringing community conversations to you once again this week. Ooh, child, there's a lot going on in the world this week. Lots happening. And we all got some feelings about what's going on. Everybody's talking about Ukraine and the US. But this week in What's Going On, I want to talk about something that matters. I shouldn't say matters. That's a little closer to home for many of us. So join me in What's Going On. I'm going to take a little bit of extra time here to go through some things that are happening. In What's Going On, we focus on things that are happening in our community that are particularly pertinent to our community. And while we empathize, understand, support those across the world who fight for justice, who are laying their lives on the line, who are losing their homes, their heritage, their history, minute by minute for the past few years. Did you know that's also happening right at home for us? Between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Did you know that these two countries are now on no-fly list, high risk zones for the US? That's actually, interestingly enough, how I even became aware that this was going on. I got an alert on my phone for travel destinations, as I often do, sharing that Rwanda and DRC are now on no-fly list, high risk zones for the US and for Canadian travelers. And I thought, what? What's going on over there? I need to know. And that started a bit of my deep dive. Now, this has been going on a while, friends, and many of you are probably better versed in the history of it than I am. So if you're watching on YouTube, whether you're watching the live or you're watching the replay, please weigh in. Share your perspective. Tell us what's happening. Tell us what you know about. Let's be respectful of one another's perspectives because I want to hear from you, whether you or your family are from DRC or Rwanda. This has been going on for a while. There've been 5 invasions, and this is according to international news. There've been 5 invasions by Rwanda of the Democratic Republic of Congo in the 90s, the early 200s, 2 conflicts in the 2000s, 200s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, between 2006 to 2009, between 2012 to 2013. And I'm like, guys, where's the brotherly love? You know, I thought we were pushing past this. Now we're in 2025. You know, we went through an entire pandemic together, right? And once again in November 2021, I mean, weren't we just trying to recover and trying to put the world back together? Weren't we just trying to make peace in our own homes? My brothers, my sisters. In November 2021, it's being called a rebel group. Tell me what you think. Is this a rebel group? Is this a legitimate group? What do you think? The March 23 movement, named M23, it's a Rwandan rebel group. And the contention is whether or not they're backed by the Rwandan government. So that's one of the big things that's up for contention. The Rwandan government is saying they've not been a part, or, you know, they've not participated in any of this behavior. These are just, citizens acting on their own free will. So the contention is whether or not the Rwandan government has been complicit, one, involved with financing, two, involved with weaponry, three. And at this point, the invasion covers what is considered to be the size of Connecticut. So it says that it escalated in January 2025, y'all. This year, my friends, this is nearly 4 years. And the world is talking about Ukraine. And yes, Ukraine needs attention. And the world is talking about Palestine and Israel. And yes, that needs attention. But is the world enraged? Is the world supporting? Or are they doing what they usually do and just go, that's y'all's problem, Africa? Well, you know what? It's true. It is our problem, right? As Afro people across the globe, it's our problem. And who's coming to save us? No one. We have to deal with this. And with this recent movement, we now have Lake Kivu. Forgive me if I am butchering names. Please let me know. Goma and Bukavu have been taken within the last 3 weeks. Why? Right? Why? Well, one conversation is that the rebellion is meant to protect the Congolese Tutsi. If we are able to, well, I'm speaking, what their language is. If they're able to dismantle the democratic forces for the liberation of Rwanda, which is another Rwandan rebel group based in the same area, the intention for M23 then is to march all the way to Kinshasa. The Rwandan president says he sympathizes with the fear of, further conflict, but we are not hearing or seeing anything that says that we are putting a stop to this. We're not hearing or seeing anything that says this needs to end. No one is really talking about it. No one is sending help, sending troops, sending airstrikes. None of that is happening. This is a heavier, weightier conversation than we tend to have on this show, but this is happening right now, and it's been happening for quite some time. And it's not just the two countries. Burundi is panicking as well. Burundi is also on that list. And there's so many other conflicts happening across the continent. And we've spent time on this show talking about collaboration, talking about South-South cooperation, talking about working together, talking about improving our education through literacy, talking about the strength and the beauty of the royal Black family. And these are all great ideals that we see today. They exist today. We celebrate them today. But we need these to be more than common local in our homes. We need our governments and our peoples across the continent and across the world to see that this constant beratement of ourselves, this self-loathing, this deep-rooted tribalism that does also cross our internationally understood geographic lines. Our friends, is this helping us? Is this helping us? Does this progress our children? Does this progress our future? Is this what we want? Is this what we are working towards? Please, if you are in or from DRC, if you are in or from Rwanda, in or from Burundi, or any of the neighboring countries, if you are intimately familiar with what is going on, please let us know. Contact us here at LFB Radio. Drop a comment below if you're watching us on the YouTube channel, because we really need to be talking about this. As always, I'm sharing with you the link so that you can go check it for yourself. Add more links. Let's talk about it. War is defined as the the breakdown in diplomacy. And diplomacy is based entirely on our ability to hold and maintain dialogue, hard conversation, but real conversation. We've done this before. We've gotten past our differences before. We've rallied together and we have chosen our future over our squabbles, over our deep rooted pain, over our trauma. We have chosen healing before, and we can do it again. So tell me what you think. Nadia, you're from the Caribbean. You're not even, African born. You don't have the right to talk about this topic. Tell me that, you know. Nadia, you're here to talk about her story month and keep things happy and light. Why did you bring us down at the beginning of the show? Tell me that too, right? Because unless we're willing to have the conversations, for good or for bad, easy or hard, we can't make progress. And what can the rest of us in the diaspora do? What can the rest of us in the diaspora commit to so that this is not our children's reality? You know, if you watched the movie, Hotel Rwanda, if you watched some of these movies, if you learned about these things in school, they were meant to be history. We're meant to learn from our history so that we don't repeat it, my friends. So tell me what you think. Tell me what you think the world, the international stage should be doing right now to help our family members, whether there is direct blood connecting us or 400 years of enslavement between us, it's still our family. So tell us what you think the world should be doing. What should governments around the world be doing to help? What should our continental governments be doing to help end the conflict? I don't really have a side here. I don't have a side in any conflict. My side is always the children. And is this fair to them now? And is this adding to or taking away from their future? Come on, guys, we got to do better on all sides. We have to do better. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you think I have a right to have an opinion in this conversation or not. Tell me what your opinion is in this conversation. And remember to be respectful, hold space for the fact that other opinions are allowed to be different from yours. Now, this is what we do, right? We have real talk and then we eat food. We have real talk and then we fellowship. We have real talk and then we get down to brass tacks and we deal with the issues that are at hand. And we smile not to hide or cover up, but we smile because we know that our happiness and our peace is our strength. And then we invite others into our home and we give them that warmth that permeates all of our variations of culture. We give them that warmth, regardless of our language. That come home. Anyone who walks in the door is at home. Anyone who walks in the door gets to feel welcomed and celebrated and be at home, right? We'll feed you till you can't move. We'll play music and get your bones jumping because this is what we do, friends. And I'm asking you to welcome a new friend home with us because with the weight of everything that is going on in the world, we have international conversations that go over most of our heads. We have, worries and concerns. I mean, where do you travel these days? Where do you get to go anymore? And with all of that, we still have home to deal with. We still got maybe kids, maybe a blended family of kids, work, life, business, church, mosque. Still got things to do, right? And so, in the face of constant bombardment and constant, externally stressful scenarios, we need mechanisms to ground us in reality. We need ways to settle ourselves and bring joy and peace into our space. Because our children, whether they come from us or they're in our vicinity, our children feed off of what we produce. And so this generation has the responsibility of healing ourselves, healing our past generations, and creating healing for our generations to come. Because we don't have enough to do, right? So we got to take care of everything. Because if we are the generation that stops the cycles, then it's a lot of work for us to undertake. And we have a friend who's going to help us with some of that work, with a great deal of intention. There's a lot of talk about self-care. And, self-care has become, what do young people say, a flex. Self-care has become a status symbol, right? Oh, I go to the spa. Oh, I get my nails done. All of these external, very costly expressions of self-care. Well, let's talk about the love we can show ourselves in the moment and the invitation we can issue to our children to practice with us in the moment with things we can find around the house, things that we can do at the drop of a dime so that we root and ground ourselves. And I'm really happy to introduce to you my friend, Crytal Wong Kruger from Leohan Inc. She's going to be here to share with us. Leohan is an education tech company, EdTech, founded in 2018 in Mississauga. So if you're not familiar with Mississauga, it's in the Greater Toronto area in Ontario, Canada. Crytal is a parent of 3 children, ages 14, 12, and 8, and has combined engineering science and an MBA degree from the University of Toronto. She began her career in the mobile tech space before the first iPhone was even made. Yes, we are young. We were here before the first iPhone. Since founding her company, she has worked closely to develop a music and technology curriculum for Montessori elementary students and has become a sought-after speaker. In 2022, she was a top 100 finalist in the National Total Mom Entrepreneur competition, placing 3rd in the popular votes category, and was listed as an Asian founder to watch by Startup Canada. As we celebrate Women's Her Story Month, all month long in March, we are looking at 5-minute self-care opportunities for the overwhelmed mom. Because like I said, there's a lot going on outside and inside our homes these days. And because Crytal, as a mother of 3, is able to continue to show up with courage, she does this coming from a place of having to help, of choosing to help parents now find those small moments, take advantage of those small moments, really go deeper in those small moments so that they can be brought closer together with their children. Crytal herself came up as a first-generation Canadian-born member of her family, participating in the family business, taking care of an ailing father at the age of 8. And through all of this, we talked about having to heal past traumas, stay healed, continue healing, provide healing for the next generation. She's found ways to stay connected to herself while allowing her children to be children. I am so happy to welcome up on stage with us now, Crytal.
Hello, Nadia. Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. What a story you were sharing at the beginning. Really, truly.
Yeah. And we hear from Marie in Montreal. Her family is not safe in Goma, and it's very sad. And these are real people's lives that we're talking about. From my background in international development, we tend to use these big words that keep things far away from the reality that one person is too many in a conflict. And we compare numbers and we use these things to determine who gets funding and who gets aid and who gets support, who gets troops, and all this stuff. One person is too many.
Yeah.
And so, Marie, thank you for sharing with us. We appreciate that you've taken that time. We will continue to be in support of all of our families. And let us know what is expected, required, demanded of the community. And here we have that duality, Crystal. We constantly talk about this duality of needing to do, to fix, but to stay centered, grounded, whole, at peace, all at the same time. Before we get too deep into it, tell us about you. Tell us about being born in Canada to parents who weren't. Tell us about raising children in Canada, that whole process for you. Tell us about the joy that you have decided to hold on to in your life.
Yes, I love that part. I love that part. And maybe we can start there because there are too many stories, as we all have, right? And I think as a child, I had noticed that children, we have this way of being so curious of the world, right? And there's this innate joy. And yet, very, very early on, you'll have adults around you telling you, be quiet, don't make a noise, watch yourself, stand up straight, et cetera, do this, don't do that. You're not doing that good enough. And I said, I am never going to forget what it's like to be a kid. I promised myself that. And it seems like, thankfully, I've held on to that because I've seen so many people grow up. And then next thing they know, they're an adult. And suddenly they've become that boring adult that we all said we would never be. Right? And it's like we need those reminders, that permission to say, no, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be this way. Yeah. Yeah, I was lucky. My parents, they moved over here from Hong Kong in their very early 20s. They wanted a better life, like many people did. It takes a lot to say, I'm going to move to the other side of the planet. And so because of that, I always had that entrepreneurial context for my life. But as you had said about me learning to grow up so early on is my parents divorced when I was very young. And my father was absolutely beside himself. He was a wreck. And at 8 years old, which is the age of my youngest now, I remember taking care of my father. And I think that also stuck with me, realizing that just because children are young does not mean they are not capable of so much care and so much empathy. Yeah.
And I think right now the world needs some childish, childlike, child led empathy and a curiosity that doesn't ask, how can more be mine? But how can
Exactly.
we be well? And this is really the question as we go into March, Women's History Month. We want to celebrate. We want to look at the women in the past and all the amazing accomplishments. And we tend to forget that these accomplishments came through struggle. And as we scroll through social media, no one looks like they're struggling. And so we are wondering what's wrong with us. Why am I working so hard? Why is, this not working out for me the way how I expected? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? Not realizing that every great person that we've celebrated has done it through the struggle. And now we have opportunity while the struggle is happening, the circumstance, the issue, the real thing is going on. We have opportunity to choose how we traverse it, to choose how we continue to show up in day-to-day life.
Yeah,
And this
absolutely.
is, yeah, and this is not about suppression. So we want to really deal with it. And I want to take a moment to thank Kabongo from Toulouse, France. Merci Kabongo, je te comprends. Kabongo says, merci for this. No media attention and condemnation, right? For what's going on. So this is a weightier overall conversation than we expected, right? When we planned this show, we weren't expecting Trump and Zelensky to happen, right? We weren't expecting, to have this deeper, more meaningful conversation around what's happening on the continent. And it's such a momentous time for us to be having the conversation,
Yeah.
because the fear is now, because we're having a global conversation. In Toronto, I'm concerned about, I'm going to get up before the traffic. I'm concerned about tariffs. I'm concerned about orange juice. Real concerns for me in Toronto. But our friends in Congo and Rwanda and Burundi, they're having very different level of concerns. Our friends who just came in as refugees to Canada from the Ukraine, from Palestine, from Israel, they're having very different levels of stress and strain. And we want to bring some tools and techniques that still work.
Yes, absolutely. And I
Still
think
work.
it's so perfect, like you say, tragic times, there are always going to be these issues. And I think that's exactly what the point of all of this is, to say, if we start at the home, then we can raise children who are empathetic, who are not shut down, who instead of saying, I don't like you because you're different, we instead say, oh, let's celebrate our differences. When you're talking about how you're saying, why are we having this brotherly fights? And I remember in the worst, the lows, when I was a younger parent and my children were younger, I remember my husband said, you are so terrible and mean to us, because I'm a very kind human being, especially go out in the world. And then at home, the stress would just come through and I would lay it out on my own children. And it took me a long time to realize that the reason I was so terrible to them is because I treated them like I treated myself. And I did not know how to love myself. So I think until we realize that so many of us need to go through that healing, that we don't even love ourselves, that's why we have all the problems in the world. And instead of blaming each other, we say, hey, let's work on ourselves. Let's leverage our children's, lean on our children, because they're so capable of helping us heal. And instead of it being, we have to heal first so that our children are better, we can actually heal with our children.
Yeah. And in conversation, you gave me this concept. Well, you took an old concept, know thyself,
Yeah.
but applied it specifically to being able to show up authentically for our children. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I love, and I'm so grateful that you're willing to share that personal experience. And I think every parent has experienced that. We have all brought outside, inside, and just leveled garbage in the house. But then we have a chance. So, how can we take these opportunities to meet ourselves so
Yeah.
that we can show up authentically?
Well, there are so many different little things that we can do. And when we said in 5 minutes or less the self-care, I thought we can do things in 5 seconds. So I know we're mostly on radio. I would welcome everyone to, for a moment, find your pulse. And it's a very dear friend of mine, Maria Brown, who taught me this. It's a little bit of breath work. And I find that's the quickest thing. So if you find your pulse, and what you'll do is once you found it, and I'm just going to count down, I'll give you a few more seconds. Let me know when you found yours.
I think I got mine.
It's tricky for me sometimes too. If you can't find in your wrist, try your heart. And what you're going to do is you're going to breathe in through your nostrils and breathe not for count of 6, but 6 pulses that you can feel. So you breathe in for 6 pulses, and then you breathe out for 6 pulses. And I invite you, as you close your eyes, and really just feel your own pulse. We're all different. And you breathe in for 6, and you breathe out for 6. That you start noticing, is there a difference between when you breathe in and when you breathe out? And even just the act of doing this, right, we're already centering ourselves and we're connecting more with our bodies. Now, for those of you who are overwhelmed parents, and I know so many of us are, I would try this with my children. It's amazing because it's this little activity, it takes 5 minutes. And before I get into what we gain out of this, let me share this quick little story. I showed my little 8-year-old, and we first found his pulse, and then he was having a hard time. So I said, okay, now I want him to feel mine and breathe to my rhythm, and I breathed to his rhythm. And because he couldn't feel my pulse, I put him against my heart. And I tell you, he was so calm, listening for my heartbeat and breathing. And that's what I mean by that healing, because I was so moved. It's that skin on skin. It's that gift to be able to hold a small child in your arms, right? In those few moments. And so what we do when we breathe, there are so many benefits to that. We center ourselves, we calm down right away. So that anxiety, so many times we think it's mental talk, and it is. It's also our bodies. Our bodies are going to put us right into this anxiety. And what I've also learned, the more awareness you have of your own body, your own heart rate, scientists have discovered this as well. The more aware you are, the more ready you are to pick up patterns in the world. So if you're trying to make change in the world, you're trying to say, what is the pattern that I'm trying to seek? It's amazing. The more you are internally aware, the better you're able to pick up on patterns. So about yourself, I'm grumpy. Oh, I didn't sleep. That's a pattern. My child seems a little bit off. Oh, there's a pattern, right? Why can't we solve these problems? Oh, there's a pattern. Something so simple from knowing your heart rate.
Oh my gosh. And I mean, it's within all of us, right? It's not a tool you have to go out, you don't have to acquire it.
Yes.
And the most it demands of us is quiet. And it's interesting you said 6 beats and not the count of 6.
Yeah.
Because that even takes us a little deeper into being in tune. Like we count our breath and we time our breath, but to actually count our pulse and our heartbeat is tremendous, right? It is quite an activity. Um, I want to take a minute here to share a question we have coming in. Cynthia from Kansas City is asking, could being overwhelmed as a mom lead to mental health problems? Cynthia, absolutely 100%. But let's talk about the definition of mental health, right? I often said to people, thank you, Maria Brown, who says yes, yes, breathe in beats. If you're joining us on YouTube live or on the replay, you'll see Maria's comment popping up on the screen. But Cynthia, to your question, I always say, if you think about the lungs can be very healthy, and we don't even consider them, as we did through this breathing exercise. We don't even think about what our lungs are doing. They're just doing what they got to do, right? And then, somebody could get a cold. Now you're aware of your lungs, right? Because now your breathing is a bit staggered. You can't inhale as deeply. And then someone could progress to pneumonia. Now they're very aware of their lungs. And someone could have lung cancer. There's a spectrum of what health and illness looks like in this one part of our bodies. Our mind is not localized in our bodies. Our mind is all of us. And so, just as parts of our body can experience this variety of health and illness simultaneously, our mind does as well. And so, that constant overwhelm that is not addressed, absolutely. But one thing that's important here, based on what we're discussing with Crystal, it's not our mental health alone that our overwhelm affects. It's literally our household. We set the tone in our homes, right? And so these exercises, taking these 5 minutes to express love to ourselves so that we can effervescently express love to those around us, helps us to start peeling that overwhelm back and gives us the opportunity to go deeper so that we can live in mental wellness and health, more so than illness. Now, thank you so very much, Maria, for chiming in to breathe with beats versus breathing with time and the construct of counting and time. Tell us about breathing with the pulse, Crystal. Tell us about, I'm going to read some fancy words here that I don't actually know what they mean, so I'm really leaning on you. Interoception and pattern recognition. You talked about the pattern recognition of what's going on in my life internally versus my external world. Tell me more.
Yes. So one of the things that I love to do in terms of helping families bond is to get them to really focus on their physical senses. And if I were to ask most people, how many physical senses would you say you have? We're all taught in school. We have 5.
Yeah.
What are you asking me this for? We all know it's 5. Turns out, think even with your temperature, your touch, temperature is itself a different sense. Think about it. Cold, hot, it's a completely different thing. They say friction, vibration is a different sense. And then when I, close your eyes and turn around, you know which way you're facing, right? That is proprioception. You're aware of your body.
Knowing where your body is.
Yeah, very different from your physical touch. Interoception is knowing your internal organs, your body, your heart rate, knowing yourself, truly knowing yourself. It's amazing, right? Because we go through life not knowing these things. From that exercise, breathing with your pulse, did anyone notice? Did you notice that when you breathed in, it was a little bit faster? I noticed at the end of my 6, it gets a little bit faster, then suddenly it slows down. When you exhale, right? I never knew that before. I only learned this like 2 weeks ago, right? If I may, there's another really neat thing just to show us how we don't know even ourselves. And so I invite everyone now to take one finger and plug one of your noses, your nostrils, your left one, for example, and breathe in and breathe out. And now plug the other one. Breathe in and breathe out. Now, do you notice one is more clear than the other?
Mm-hmm.
Which one is it for you right now?
This one was more clear than this one.
Your left one. Now, what's amazing?
Yeah, my left was more clear than the right.
So everyone will be a little bit different. And guess what? You're different at different times of the day. Mm-hmm. So what people are finding is that about every 90 minutes, we'll alternate from our left then to our right. Now, it seems like we're still figuring out why this might be. There are some ideas that it might be related to the parasympathetic and then the sympathetic nervous system. Not entirely sure, but it's something that I'm now playing with. It's like, oh, which mode am I in? Absolutely wild. So again, these little things that's like, oh, a child would be very curious about it. An adult would be very curious. And there's a lot of real value in knowing ourselves, right, and being grounded.
And I think it's so interesting because I've always heard the term know thyself in a very esoteric, paraspiritual terminology, but we're looking at that interoception. Did I get it right? Okay. Yeah. Through knowing physically where we are, who we are, what are we experiencing in the moment. And I think that that's such a tremendous gateway, to the, other levels, the metaphysical levels of the terminology, know thyself. Yeah. And if we can take these moments for physical recognition of self, we can take that wherever else we want to take that.
Well, if I could actually also to address Cynthia's question about overwhelm as a parent or a mom leading to mental health problems. So I don't hide this, for many, many years, I had a very big struggle with bipolar disorder. And that's, for me, it was bipolar type 2. So I don't speak of this lightly because it's a very serious thing. I would be in a hypomanic stage, so very high functioning for the outside world. And then I would absolutely crash in bed, days on end, hiding very, very bad depression. And the way I was able to get myself off of medication, and I'm not saying this is for everyone, but it was about being aware of myself, is that I started to recognize that because of my bipolar tendencies, I don't feel tired like a typical human does, right? And as a parent, when my daughter, the second child, was 18 months old, I realized I had not slept for more than 4 hours straight for over 18 months. You're telling me that's not going to affect your mental health? Yeah, right? Absolutely. No more than 4 hours ever? Wow. And so I started masking my understanding of my fatigue. And instead of feeling physically tired, I just thought I was super sad. And so I had to start learning the moment I feel sad, stop with the negative self-talk, stop berating myself for feeling bad about feeling bad. We do this so much, especially as moms. We're always down on ourselves. Why can't you be always on? Why can't you? No, I had to say I am tired and I had to put myself to bed. And my family understood because they knew. And that's what you also got to do as a parent. As hard as it may seem, be authentic with your children and let them know this is what you need also, right? It's very much like that on an airplane. The oxygen masks fall down. You have to put it on first. You must remember that you're no good to anybody, right? If you cannot function, and it'll be worse for your children in the end. Like my father, when I was young, right? I had to take care of him because he could not take care of himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, thank you, Cynthia, because you're asking a question that we all wonder about. And, the braveness that you, Cynthia, and you, Crystal, are, sharing with us, standing up in this courage to say, yes, to the point of diagnosis. Many of us are dealing with undiagnosed specific mental illnesses, or mental health challenges. And, we need the pause. Sometimes it's hard to even recognize that the problem is there to get the help for the problem that we've been ignoring is there. Right. So thank you, Cynthia, for, just asking the question. You're already standing up for yourself and for your family. Right.
And I
And
think
that curiosity.
sorry. Also in this world, I feel like we think we kind of get this impression of once you hear about something, you should be able to implement it right away. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And it's not that. It is a very slow progression, right? And with the ups, there are downs. But overall, if you can keep checking in with yourself, there will be a gradual up. And so just like it takes a long time, because we're tough as moms, we will do anything, right? We are tough as parents, just as it would take us months, if not years, to wear ourselves down. It will take time, to get ourselves to a point where we're thriving, like I said, because of our children. But and I noticed that though, when I started sharing my authentic feelings with my own kids, I started noticing I was happier and healthier, just like the know thyself, as I've seen lots of parents, right? They are constantly speaking to their kids in a very inauthentic way. And they're like, oh, that's so great. And I'm like, that's exhausting. And when they turn around and just see the adult, they're like, please, like, oh my goodness, I don't, right? And I'm like, why are you being fake around your kids? It's not, they don't need that. And then you're living in your own household, not being yourself. And we don't even realize that, of course, that incongruency, right, will add to tremendous overwhelm.
And it spills out, right? So our kids know.
Yeah.
They know. Yeah. I want if you're listening to us live, run, go grab something salty because Crystal has something really cool to share with us coming up soon. But if you're watching us on the replay, hit pause, run, go get something salty, hit play again because you will not want to miss this. And Crystal Kemi from Lagos, Nigeria says, thanks because the breathing works. Absolutely. And it just takes a few seconds. Every once in a while. Crystal, since we had a conversation prepping for the show, I've been remembering to listen to my pulse and breathe, particularly during traffic. Hint, hint, stay tuned to find out why. So now, as moms showing up in this world, we talked about feeling the need to be overly happy for our kids, and it's not always what's matching what we feel inside. Or, at home, your mom and wife, and if you're taking care of an older family member in your home as well, you're playing that role. You go to work, you're expected to be top notch and always polite and always smile. You go into the world and there are all of these expectations of us everywhere. And then, then we have our own expectations of where should I be at this point in my life? Why don't I have this yet? Why haven't I done that yet? And then we have, what our religions expect from us. You're supposed to dress this way, behave that way, talk that way, eat this thing, don't eat that thing, and all of these rules are constantly pressuring us internally and externally. And yet we're supposed to find time for self-love and self-care in all of this. How do we deal with this, especially I want to pull out as entrepreneurs, especially for the entrepreneurs, because the extent of expectations, internal and external, is insane when you are running something, right? Whether you express your entrepreneurship in a for-profit or a not-for-profit space, and you're parenting, and you have these internal, this internal paradox, and everybody expects you to be infinitely happy, infinitely good, infinitely kind. How do we deal?
Yeah. I feel like recognizing that is all an illusion. We make that up. We think people think about us, and yet we all don't. Where everyone's so caught up in their own world, no one's thinking about you, right? And so I think a lot of it is trust. You've got to trust the process. Be very kind with yourself. I stopped using the word balance quite a while ago, and now I think of harmony. And it's funny because my daughter's name is Harmony. And I think just like there are different with a music piece, right? You're not having every instrument play at the same time. That would be disastrous.
Exactly.
Right?
Or to play one note, just everybody plays a note. Exactly.
Yes, and there are moments when you will pause. There are moments when things are more exciting. Sometimes they're more calm. It's all beautiful. Sometimes it's more tense and it's a little bit sad or very sad. And other times it's very happy. So there's a moment in time. And so I've been learning to just let go because the world is too wondrous. And I want to make sure I never forget that. I always want to remember that. It's not because of my children, but it's also because of my children. You know what I mean? I don't do it for them, but because they're around, I'm able to remember that. So in terms of all of those expectations, it's up to us to decide, do we want to take on that expectation? Or if we say, no, let's be authentic. This is who I am. This is the why. This is my purpose that I am focused on. One of the things that I've been learning to get better at is to say no. And I was like, you know what? Maybe for me, that means
Tell
leaning
me
into
about
what I
that wrenching guilt the first time you said no to something.
right? Yes. And so the guilt and then not even the confidence to say no. It's like, maybe I'd love to, And so I thought maybe for the person that I am, not saying no, but saying, I've already said yes to something else, right? And remembering that. What am I saying yes to? Making sure I do that first. And so that I feel like is a core part of how I've been able to function better is remembering what is that single one thing that I need to do every day. And from that habit, everything else seems to follow. Now, it may be different for everybody, for myself and what I've noticed from others as well that seems to work from them is self-awareness. And how do we have that self-awareness? For me, it might sound very particular, but I have a journal that I write in. I use different colored pens because color is pretty. And I'll use a different color for the different thing I'm doing. So I'll write in a light blue, I'm meeting someone at this time. And I'll write a little comment. And then I'm having a date with my child, and I'll write that in pink, right? And at the end of the day, I fill out the blanks with just reflection. What am I grateful for? And I tell you, Nadia, I have found that every time I do just pay attention to what I'm working on with no expectations on what I should be doing, feeling no guilt about what I'm not doing, just simply without judgment, noticing what I'm doing, my life is it's working the way I want it to. The moment I stop, everything's off the rails. So that just happens to be me. I think there's some truth to it. If you pay attention, that's all it is. No judgment. Pay attention, and you will find in those quiet moments of reflection, oh, I wanted to get up today and give myself, just a little bit of a meditation, or I wanted to go for that walk, right? Or I wanted to hear that song, want to drink my favorite cup of tea, right? Whatever it is.
As we talk about, the Pareto model and the 80-20 rule in Six Sigma, 20% of our activity is leading to 80% of our happiness, right?
Mm.
So if we dig deeper to the 20 of the 20 of the 20 of the 20, we find that one thing that you found, that one thing that triggers a chain reaction of joy and happiness throughout. Moses in Toronto. Moses, you're asking a serious question here, my friend.
And I love this question.
I feel like this is a part two kind of question, like a whole show kind of question.
And I gotta tell you, for me, I used to feel this overwhelming, and this is not me saying, "Oh, look at me, I don't have these problems." Like I just explained to you, I was in bed for hours, right, depressed and completely could not even start. And I was very fortunate to have children that understand and a partner who understands. I know not everyone has that, and so I say the people that depend on you, you've got to get over your discomfort, and you have to have that conversation.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
share that load. Because what I noticed is the moment that I started or I stopped trying to do everything for my children, I taught them how to make their own lunch, right? I taught them how to do their laundry. And at first it takes longer, But would I rather suffer just a little bit now, or would I rather suffer for years and years and years, you know?
And build their independence as well, which is a great gift to them. So I just want to fill in everyone on what Moses's question is. Why should a mom be overwhelmed where the husband is around, right? And just to bounce back, Ajoa from Accra in Ghana says, great topic. Thank you, Ajoa. And let me know if I'm pronouncing your name correctly or if I'm not. And Kiki from Sudbury is a first-time viewer. Thank you, Kiki, for joining us. Um, so, Moses, why should a mom be overwhelmed where the husband is around? Why? Answer the question for me, Moses. I'll say this much. I remember listening to, I believe his name is Mark Kruger, might be messing up his last name, but he talks about the basic brain patterning behavior between the understood biological male and the understood biological female, and that the masculine way of thinking is to put everything naturally in a box, and that there's a box called nothing where men spend quite a bit of time. And then the woman's brain, the understood biological female brain, is like a ball of wire where everything is connected and everything touches everything else. So there is the inherent natural overwhelm that occurs in a woman's body, and then there are the social expectations that multiply that effect. Whole different conversation, my friend, for a whole different day. Um, we are coming on close to our hour. This has been such an enriching conversation, and we're hearing from our viewers and our listeners who are joining us, listening through online radio, through the website, through the app, or watching us live on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, everywhere that we are. Thank you guys so much for telling us how meaningful the conversation has been to you. There's something really cool that we grabbed our salty snack for that I want to make sure that we get a chance to do. And then I want you to tell us how we can date our children. So really, really fast. Let's see if we can get this in.
Yes. So a few more moments for you to grab something that tastes salty. It could be a salt cracker. If you don't have anything, maybe some table salt. That might be a bit strong. And genuinely, we've not tried this over the radio before. So if it doesn't work, well, forgive me, and you can try it on your own by playing it through your own speakers. Mm-hmm. Okay, I would love to offer actually an acronym, and this will be the first time I've ever shared this publicly. And it's something that I actually learned from my children. And it's really this paradox. It's this irony of you're overwhelmed as a parent, and the way to reduce that overwhelm is not to run away from your children, but to lean into your children because they're part of your life, right? And the more that you are calm, the more they will be calm, and the more it's this positive self-reinforcing cycle upwards, right? Instead of down. And I learned, this is from my teenager, actually, this is what I realized. So if any of you have young children and you're thinking, oh, I got to hold on to them now before they get older, because then they won't want it to deal with you anymore, I can tell you this doesn't have to be the case. And the first thing I had learned was that if I could make my teenager laugh every day, I'm good. I'm good. So actually the acronym, and this is what I mean, we're so stressed out, right? We want, chill, just chill. So the C, this might be the hardest, but it will be fun, I promise you, is confide in your child. They can be as young as 3. You can just tell them what's on your heart, tell them in a way that really they can understand, but confide in them, tell them your struggles. They will grow because of it. You will feel more authentic. H, hug your child. When they're babies, we hear a lot about skin on skin, but hugging your child, is appropriate even when they're older. So hug. The I is make sure you say, I love you every day. I know that's hard for a lot of us. The way we're brought up, we may not be used to saying it. So you might work yourself to that, but say, I love you in however way you can every day. It means a lot. I already talked about laughing. That's your first L. So we have confide, hug, say I love you, laugh. And last one is learn something together, because it really humanizes you. You are not needed to be the expert in everything as a parent. And I feel like that's really where the overwhelm comes from the most, is that we're expecting something of ourselves that no one ever told us that we should be. We're not meant to be the perfect parent you can learn with your child.
Oh my gosh, that is, whoo, I need to chill. I need a chill pill. I need to.
So you
I'm
just do that, and you can date. What I mean by dating your child is do those things. Find that
yeah.
activity. It could be that breathing thing we talked about at the
Mhm,
beginning, right? It could be any of
mhm.
those things. Or we could
Yes.
do this. So try
So
this
let's give
yourself
it a
now.
shot.
Yeah. And
I
then
had
you,
a
yes. Oh,
looking for the cracker.
I have a package of seaweed. So I'm going to tear this open right now.
My daughter's favorite snack.
Yes. So here's my very salty. Okay, so this comes from a study where they found, scientists found that ocean sounds enhance the salty flavor in things.
Mhm.
So you tell me, Nadia, would you like to try with enhancing the salty or taking it away?
Well, I'm also waiting on my sidekick to bring me my salty snack. So you go ahead with enhancing
Okay,
the.
we only have a few minutes left and we can do this again. All right, so let's hope this works. Here, you can hear it. Okay, here's some sound waves. So put the salt in your mouth.
Mhm.
Now taste how salty that is, right? The sound waves, the beautiful sound waves of the ocean. Okay, now imagine you're in the middle of traffic. It's very stressful traffic. All the cars, right? And what do you think of that? So if this worked properly, no, going back to the waves now. And so if this worked for you, what I have learned in the past, every time I try this, I'm always nervous that it won't work. And people look at me like, wait a minute, that piece I just bit didn't have the same amount of salt.
As
That's
the,
what it's about. But then we, try it again. They're like, oh, then the salt goes away. It's
yeah.
the strangest thing. So, another thing about overwhelm is remembering that it's not just about our minds. Our
Mhm.
body and the senses, the information we take in entirely impacts how we perceive the world. Even something as unsuspecting as sound
Yeah.
changes when you taste something.
Yeah. Do you mind doing it again? I
Oh,
got my.
yes. Okay. So put in your mouth. Here's the
Okay.
ocean sound.
Okay.
Hang on. Here we go. Oh. Okay, so you got a salty saltine. Do you have another
Mhm.
piece? Because otherwise you're
Mhm.
going to think you're putting away all the salt, right? So get a
Mhm.
fresh piece because I don't want anyone saying, hey, okay, here it is, traffic jams.
Wow.
The look on your face. Sorry.
So the funny thing is, when I took the first bit, thanks, kiddo. She rescued me here. Um, when I took the first bit, I thought, oh wait, these ones were reduced salt. This might not work.
Dang. So what did you notice the difference? Because I saw your face change.
Right away. It was like, oh, like, that was very interesting because we tend not to use terribly much salt, right? So I was like, oh, wait, this might not work because it's reduced salt. But it works indeed.
If you're alive with us on any place that can comment and you tried that, I'd love to know
Please
if
let
it
us
did
know.
or did not work. I'd love to know because I've not seen it not work yet, but it always makes me, we have another sound that that helps bring out the bitterness in chocolate.
Interesting.
That one's
Mhm.
wild because then the alternative sound, which is light and airy as opposed to the low and brassy, when you bring up the light and airy sounds, the bitterness lifts and sweetness comes out and people's minds are blown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an example of how can you experience the physical real world in this wondrous way,
Mhm.
to kind of tie it back to the beginning that has nothing to do with strife, nothing to do with conflict. Just we're humans. We were gifted this incredible gift of life in this world. How can we experience it with joy in ways that adults are also going to be so entertained and engaged
Yeah.
as our children? I think that's really ultimately why I care so much. We have such an incredible opportunity, right, to live with joy. And
Yes.
yet, because of our inability to forgive ourselves, and to accept help from our loved ones, to be authentic and to heal with them because of we think we can't do that, then we're robbing ourselves, right? But
Oh my
the
God.
opposite is also true.
And and I took a page from your book just now, because as I was doing the experiment, I gave it to my daughter, who ran and grabbed me the cracker, so that we were actually just here doing it together. Those moments, right? Those moments where we have those mini dates with our children. Production has been so gracious to give us 10 more minutes so that we can chat a little bit more about this, because it's so important. And as we can see from the questions in the comments, it is something that we're thinking about and maybe not asking questions about, because maybe we can't formulate the question, right? Maybe we are so overwhelmed, we don't know what help we need to ask for that help. And so you're giving us these real, actual tools that we can implement right here, right now, at any point in time during our day. Um, how can we date our kids? Tell us about how you create a date situation for a parent and a child. Tell us how you put it together, and then how could we do something similar on our own?
It's a lot easier than you think. I often remind myself of the first time you thought you really liked somebody, right? What did that feel like to say, oh, I'm going to go on a date with that person, right? Your heart's exploding. You're all like excited and you're so present when you are there. Were you on your phone? I know we're joking about iPhones not being a thing when we were young, right? But like you are not on your phone. You're not having a conversation with someone else. You are fully present with that person one-on-one. And when my two older kids were younger, I noticed that suddenly in life, because I was trying to give them every opportunity and I was putting them in everything that I did when I was a kid, because, growing up, Asian parents, we were in things 7 days a week. And so were my children. But then I noticed this is terrible. I'm watching them grow up behind windows at gymnastics class, music class. The parents in the waiting room were all on their phones, like playing Candy Crush or trying to get work done. I thought, this is not the life that I wanted, because I could tell my children were growing apart from us, right? And I thought, come on, how hard is it that just once a week I would take one kid and my partner would take the other kid and we'd just spend some time. There was nothing more fancy than that to start. We just went out for dinner, and my daughter was 4 at the time, and I couldn't believe how suddenly, because she didn't have to compete with anyone else, she was an entirely different human. And now, because we don't realize it as adults, as parents, we only see our kids with another adults around, other kids around. If we're hanging out with other families, it's always the adults hanging out alone and the kids hanging out alone. The moment you have one-on-one time with your child, where you're not telling them what to do, where you're not running around trying to do something else, you're just sitting there with them, open heart to listen. Wow, right? They will ask you how you're doing. They will want to know more about you, and you're able to heal. And that's what I started noticing. And then, because I love learning, I just started, doing research on all these funny things. And what I noticed was, in doing very simple activities like this that really immerse us and engage us, there are all these neurochemicals that get released. The bonding chemical, right? The dopamine from like, oh, I'm motivated to learn something new. That, oh, I solved something with my child. So it really is being like that kid again. Remember we were talking at the beginning, right? That so many of us, when we were children, we're like, what's with these adults? And we said, oh, I'll never be a boring adult. And then somehow life's pressures and the expectations that we think we need to listen to make us become boring adults. And I'm like, none of that. So yeah,
Oh,
learn from your child. Yeah.
yes. Now, we posted chill in the comments below so that people can come back and find that resource. Thank you to your son for providing us with that. And I know I saw that you also have like a guideline, almost like a checklist on how we can create dates with our children, how we can show up and be more, one-on-one with our children. And
Yeah.
we're going to put that link below. But tell us a little bit about what we would find in there.
In a date itself. Or
Yeah.
I would even
Well, no,
call
in your you had a walkthrough that kind of would help us know how to do it. I
yeah.
feel like people are like, oh, this sounds great, but I don't have time. I got this going on. I got that going on. And I know I saw that you have a resource that we can kind of take away and use. So yeah, how can we find that?
Yeah, well, I find that, depending on where you are with your child, I recognize we're all at very different stages and phases with our relationship with our child. Some of us may have younger children, so it's easier now, right? We haven't already grown apart, and it's easier to start when they're younger to do things together. But if you haven't had that closer relationship with your child, it's been more transactional and more about telling them what to do and just making sure they are where they need to be, then yeah, it might take, you might need to start, closer to where I said about just simply making them laugh every day, right? And just simply listening. But in terms of a framework, the Liohan name actually stands for live in our here and now. Live in our here and now. And I also realized that it does spell out the words for a 6-step framework. So if you can remember, live in our here and now, LIOHAN, the thing that I already told you about 101 times. So just love, authentic you 101, love. The I stands for identities. We have talked about that today. We wear so many different hats. And I find that as parents, depending on how we were brought up, we might just wear one hat all the time. We might just always be the disciplinarian because we think that's what the child needs. When in reality, there are many different ways that we can be with our child. So just being aware of the different identities. The O stands for our, like our time, our teamwork. And I think that's huge, is find an interest that you and your child both share. Work as a team. It could be one of my children, we love making music together. It gives me joy. So we do that together. Another child loves baking. So we do that. Another one loves origami right now. So we'll do that. Right. And it's good for me. It's good for them. So it's about teamwork and the little habits that you want to make every day to make your life healthier and happier. That's what I mean by the O for our, O-U-R. The here, H is for here. So being here, being present is so important. So like when you're doing that breathing exercise, for example, making sure that you can be present. The A is for authenticity. That's hard for a lot of us.
Oh yeah.
So hard. There was a time when we talked about being vulnerable. And I thought, let's turn that into a word that might be a bit more like, being authentic. You are vulnerable when you're authentic. And I think having that authentic relationship, because if you're not yourself in front of your kids, then who are they loving? They're not loving you. They're loving
Ooh, that's a really strong one there. Oh my gosh, if you're not yourself around your kids, who are they loving? That is, we need a moment to take that, because that showing up with authenticity, we think that when we're offloading the anger from the outside world at home, that's our authentic self, because we hide the anger outside. But the anger is a symptom of our authentic self being masked. And so are our children able to fall in love with us when we're being cloaked by the thing that we think is authentic? Oh my gosh. We have one more minute left in our conversation.
Let me
Thank
give
you
you the
so much.
N. The N
Yeah.
is novelty. And that's what I mean, because you'll be in a different place. You'll be able to be authentic. And for the novelty, yeah, absolutely look us up. Parenting with Kids at Parenting with Kids on Instagram. I post a lot of little insights and tips like this and fun activities like that thing we just did with the salt that will blow your mind and give you something to do on your date, including some conversation starters for, depending where you are, simple little things just to get to know each other better. And it makes a
Yeah.
massive difference.
And I saw you have a family date starter kit. We're going to post that link so that people can download below on the YouTube channel. So if you're listening to us on the radio through the website or through the app, go find us on YouTube at Love Bay Radio, and you'll see the link below, and you can download the starter kit so you can do this on your own. Crystal, you have an event coming up at the end of March. We're also going to post some information about that. Unfortunately, this is only if you're in the Toronto area, in the Vaughan, North York area. But if you're anywhere in the world, you can use that family date starter kit to get started now. And you have these tools for how to address your own overwhelm as a mom. Crystal, thank you so very much for spending this time, for sharing this space, for feeling the weight of the moment and still opening up space for joy and, for authenticity, and for us to practice what we're learning about here, right now. Thank you so very much, Crystal, for joining us. My friends, my name is Nadia, and I'm so thankful to have brought community conversations to you one more time. Continue the conversation.